Welcome to the It's Better Together podcast, where intelligent conversations turn dreams into action, with hosts Marcy Stout and Allison Nissen. Each episode highlights inspirational women and practical business advice from the Revel Coach Tuesday at 2 live programs. From building a website to securing more clients, we cover topics that are interesting to you. Today we chat with Layne Lyons of the Legal Protection Method. For more information about Layne, visit her at laynelyons.com.
As Allison said, I am a lawyer and a business protector for women entrepreneurs. I'm also the creator of the Legal Umbrella Method. And I know that sounds a little curious. What does an umbrella have to do with the law? But I promise you, we will get there. What does that exactly mean? I provide contracts and agreements, all of the legal foundations that an online entrepreneur, whether you're a coach or a service-based entrepreneur, if you have an online business, you need to get protected. And what I do is I help you get those foundational key pieces in place to make sure that you are protected, your business is protected, and all of your hard work and investments are protected. And I have to say we have a pretty good time as we're doing it, right? I always like to say I'm not that kind of lawyer.
All right, so the first question is, what do I need?
The real reason why we have you here.
Yeah, you need an umbrella, but we'll get there, I'm sure.
So Layne, it's so great to meet you. We are really excited about this interview. Before we begin, can you tell us a little bit how you got started and your journey to get you to where you are today?
Yes, definitely. And it is a story with a lot of bumps and waves in the road, a lot of roller coasters. So everybody do me a favor and buckle up your seatbelt because we are going for a ride. The story will have twists and turns, a little bit of a gasp, and definitely an unexpected ending. So the beginning is not so unique. I started out as a lawyer. I graduated from Duke Law School 25 years ago, which makes me a little bit older than you probably think. And I loved being a lawyer. When I first graduated, I worked for the district attorney's office in a division that at the time, this is the mid-90s, at the time was called sex crimes. It's now changed to special victims. That means that I prosecuted crimes. I represented the state, and I prosecuted crimes where the victims were mostly children, mostly sexual abuse crimes, mostly children who had been pulled out of their home for one way or the other. And I'm sure as a lot of you are listening, your heart is starting to pound because that's a really important, heavy subset of our society, right? Kids who have already been so failed by the system. So I took that job very seriously. I slept never. I ate whatever was the nearest thing right to the courthouse. A lot of times I would come back from court and my desk would be littered with silver wrappers from Hershey Kisses. And I would think, did I eat all of these? And so I slept never. I ate terribly, just food that was absolutely devoid of nutrition. And I was underneath a mountain of stress because I took my job so seriously, right? I wanted to make sure that these kids were finally taken care of. Eventually, all of that caught up with me. And I ended up very, very sick. You know, when we don't eat, we don't sleep, and we're under so much stress, we can only sustain burning the candle like that for so long. And eventually it all caught up with me, and I became very, very sick with what doctors called incurable fatigue. I ended up in a wheelchair without the use of my arms or my legs, a motorized wheelchair. And that started, 13 doctors said I would never walk again. My husband and I traveled starting all over the United States. We traveled to New York, to Southern California, Northern California. We went to a hospital in Florida. Everyone said, you're not gonna walk again. Here's your prescription. Get used to it. You're never gonna walk. You're probably never gonna walk again. And 2 doctors actually told my husband to prepare for me not being there the following year. Pretty serious stuff, right? Suddenly, that fierce protector that I had been using all of those years for my clients and the victims of those crimes, I turned on myself. And my husband and I went on an 8-year healing quest all over the globe. I spent a month in a hospital in Mexico. I spent a month in a hospital in Switzerland. I did a juice fast for 18 months. You know, when we all talk about a juice fast, we say, oh my God, I'm so hungry. I've been on a juice fast for 5 days. We're talking about a year and a half, people.
No.
A year and a half juice fast. I did, let me think of some other interesting ones. In 1 year, I did 500 IVs on myself. My husband learned how to put in a line. I had a full-time nurse coming to my house 3 days a week to sit with me while we did the IV drips. I did bee venom shots all over my body. I drank, here's one, I drank turmeric mud, which is as disgusting as it sounds. It had these little gritty rocks in it. And none of that worked. None of it. Every single thing I tried, I just kept getting sicker and sicker. And finally, when I was in that hospital in Switzerland, a little bit of a light bulb went off that maybe there was an alternate way to thread this needle, right? That maybe conventional medicine and alternative medicine, which I had been using, were not going to be the way through to the other side. But I knew the whole time that there would be a way through to the other side. And I'm very, very lucky. My husband kept saying to me, this is not it. This is not it. Meaning you are not going to be sitting in that wheelchair forever. I made the best of it. You can see I'm a pretty cheerful person, but it was hard going and it was a long, long time. Eventually, the hospital in Switzerland, Paralysis, opened up as sort of an adjunct hospital in Scottsdale, Arizona, following the same type of medicine, which is called biological medicine. That means it's a branch of medicine that's using the body's own systems to build itself up, right? Not going after pathogens, not saying what's wrong with the body, but saying what can we build up in the body to bring this person back into balance. And I started going to that hospital. I have now been to that hospital 15 times over 5 years. Every time I go and stay, I get a little bit better and a little bit better. And they do all kinds of incredible, one day we can talk about all the incredible things they do at that hospital. It's called the Biomed Center for anybody who's listening, who is sick or knows someone who's sick and wants to find some alternatives that might help them. One thing that I noticed that really helped me in all of those different places, the light bulb went off in Switzerland and it continued to get brighter and brighter and brighter in Scottsdale, Arizona, was what I was eating. I realized that 3 times a day, 7 times a week, 7 days a week, 21 times a week, I had control over what I was putting into my body. And I found out that food and eating whole, nutritious food brought back my energy, right? In the beginning, I said that all that the doctors ever called what was wrong with me was incurable fatigue. So I found the foods that energized me. I found the things that moved my needle along and helped me get better. And when that all happened and I got out of my wheelchair and I started walking again, am I on mute? Am I good? Okay, little thing came flashing up. And I started walking again. I wanted to share the power of food with everyone. So I went back to school. You know, I mean, here I was, I'm an attorney, right? School is a comfortable place for me, but I hadn't been in school at that point for over 20 years, and taking the bar was a distant memory. But I went back to school and I became certified as a nutritionist because I wanted to share the power of food with everyone that I could. I really just wanted an excuse to tell people what to eat. I was like, you need to put down that pretzel. You know, that big soft pretzel. I was like, that's not going to help you. But when you're just a layperson, it does, being a nutritionist gave me some credibility, right? So I went back to school, I got my certification as a nutritionist, and I started working specifically with women, what I call service-oriented or mission-driven, heart-centered entrepreneurs who were serving other women. So lots of coaches, web designers, graphic designers, these women who were serving other women and finding themselves on the brink of burnout. So I coached these women in how to increase their energy through the 3 things that I taught were better sleep, better eating, and better stress management. Just, you can hear the parallel, the exact things that had gotten me totally down that hole that I went into, into what I call energy debt. Those things had gotten me sick. I really just taught exactly what I knew for myself, what had worked for me. And the incredible thing is I started having all of this success with these other women. I earned the nickname Energy Magician from one of my clients, and it stuck, and I started marketing myself as the Energy Magician, and I was loving life. Here I was making a difference in these women's lives, and really because I was making a difference in their health and in their lives, I was making a difference in their businesses. And I just love that. I was lit up and on top of the world.
Layne, that is, love that story. And
thank you.
Said that there would be like a twist and something.
Here we go.
I was not expecting that. And it is amazing. And you're standing now.
Yes, I am. And here comes the twist. When I was at the peak of my health coaching career, I was approached by another coach who said, let's collaborate. What do you think about collaborating and creating a program together? I was super excited. I thought that that would be a really great way to be able to reach more people. And I love working in a team. That's something that when I work with my clients, I love. That's my favorite part of work, is being with other people, right? We're all here together today. I love that. You know, it can get lonely behind the computer. So, I'm seeing chats popping up. Okay, so he approached me and said, do you want to work together? And for the next 8 months, we created all of this content together. And even though I'm a lawyer and I knew better, I proceeded with no written agreement. I figured we're aligned. Same thing I hear from my clients all the time. We're on the same page. That's not going to happen to me. And I shared 8 months of content with her together, invested money, promise of profits, worked so hard for 8 months building this huge Google Drive together with absolutely no legal protections. And here we go. The roller coaster has now come up, 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 up. And here comes the embarrassing part. That's right. I got completely burnt. I can't say she stole because we were sharing. So that's not stealing, but she walked away with all of our content, all of the money that we invested. And of course, the bigger thing is all the money that we were going to make, all the difference that we were going to make together. So all of that just disappeared, poof. I got, obviously, you can imagine, super, super upset, right? I just was like, how could this happen? It's unthinkable. And that very night, I have a tendency to take my emotions and channel them into something. I think that being such a fighter and being so determined is how I got better. A lot of people, I think, would have kind of given up at some point, but that's just not in my nature. I sat down at this very laptop that night, the night that it was clear that things were going down the drain, and I started drafting all of the contracts that I wished I would have had with her. Just the things that would have protected me. And as I was drafting them, I was like, this is a lot easier than, it would have been a lot easier if I just would have had these contracts in the first place, right? Ahead of the curve. And over the next month, I just was having casual conversations with I have health coach friends because I was in a health coaching program 6 years ago. So I had conversations with my health coaching friends, just telling them about how I had gotten burnt and then how I was coming back and making these contracts for myself. And you know the response that I got from each and every one of them?
Wait a contracts.
Wait a second, exactly, wait a second. I don't have those contracts. Can I have those contracts? And so I started giving them away for free, just getting my friends protected, just saying, okay, I'm gonna give you these, tell, you know, like a beta, tell me what you think. And it went from there. And that is how I became totally unexpectedly a legal protections coach. I was never going back to practice law. I was going to be a health coach. It was wonderful. But what's so incredible, you know, I think Marcy and I were talking right before the call started about how no matter who you are, you always come back to that person, right? You're always going to be that same person shows up. Here I am now working with heart-centered entrepreneurs, mission-driven, mostly women, mission-driven, who have something in their business. They want to get their business out there. So I'm doing the exact same thing, right? I'm protecting these women and helping them grow their businesses so that their businesses can be more successful. And then I'm able to serve so many people, so many more than when I was a health coach working one-to-one, because I get into your business and I immediately help you up level where you are. And that helps you be more successful. So I can't seem to get away from it. I love it. It's kind of just, I guess, in the stars that I'm going to help women have more success in their businesses. I love what I do.
Well, what's incredible about it is that you're still doing what you do best in terms of the legal work, and it's so necessary. And I do find it personally as a new entrepreneur, it is a confusing, to know what you really, when you're protected, when you need to be protected, because you start off at some point and then you know where it goes. So that's a phenomenal story, which we have a lot of questions around that. But I want to say, even just working with you, you'd be, a walking example. It doesn't take much, to hear your story and to know that stress, poor eating, poor sleep, not doing the right things to take care of yourself will hurt you in the long run. And for you to go to the extreme of a wheelchair, that is quite a story.
Yeah. Motorized wheelchair. Because it would be one thing if it was a wheelchair where I could just use my, if my legs weren't working and I could just use my arms to, go ahead and get myself around. But it was, everything was completely shut down. There were times I couldn't even hold my sweatshirt draped over my arm. It just felt like it was breaking my arm from the heaviness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amazing. And how long were you in the wheelchair before you?
5 years.
5 years. Wow.
5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, last winter we spent the winter, my husband and I, we'll get to it, but my husband and I travel full time, and we spent last winter in Ecuador hiking the Andes. So those are some pretty tall mountains, people.
Yeah.
That's
great.
It's supposed to show you they never know. They weren't wrong. And
I have a question. So at what point did your movement start to come back? Was it a very slow progression, or was it like, wow, I got a toe to move and now I got a finger to move? Or was it like you were able to suddenly jerk and like, wow?
Yeah, so I was never paralyzed. So I think what I'm hearing you're saying is that I was sort of stiff and paralyzed. I was just in crushing pain. So I was in pain in all of my joints, and all of my connector tissues between my joints were just totally crammed with pain. Mm-hmm. And so, and really just crushing fatigue, right? It really manifested itself somewhat as fatigue, but more from just excruciating pain. So what happened was I was always able to get around in my home from, and this is not my home at the time, this is just the house that I'm renting because we travel full time. So this is obviously many years ago, a different home. We set up the furniture so that I could kind of drag myself from place to place. There was only a few months there where I needed my husband to carry me to the bathroom to be able to go to the toilet. So for the most part, I could, even if I had to crawl to get to the bathroom when I was alone, I could still get myself to the bathroom. But I couldn't do things like hold a toothbrush or hold a fork because it was just too painful to close my hand like that. So little by little things came back, and a huge needle mover. The process and the years that I went through really had a tremendous amount of detox, right? When we're gonna drink juice, and only juice, for a year and a half, 18 months, that is detoxing every single last toxin out of our body. I think toxins had a lot to do with why I got sick. I always say I'm a sensitive soul swimming in a toxic soup, right? I was born in 1971, right? So by the time I was coming home in middle school, it was microwave chicken in a plastic tray with sugar, whatever the, Chinese chicken that had all this sugar stuff on it. So it's in the microwave, and the chicken itself is filled with what, before we knew, antibiotics and hormones and sunscreen and PABA. As a little kid, I used to just be in the swimming pool. We had a swimming pool in our backyard, and I just used to soak in chlorine for hours on end. And I would cover myself with Coppertone, and I would get all these little bumps all around my ears and neck. And my mom would say, "Oh, just go wash it off." Well, nobody thought maybe you're allergic to some of that stuff, or maybe you're sensitive to some of that stuff. So all of those toxins, as far as diet, just going back to the great question you asked, all about diet, the toxins had cleared out of my body, but I was left so weak. Veganism is a great diet, and that's a wonderful thing, but it just didn't fit the bill for me. And my doctor in Scottsdale, Arizona, the one that I was mentioning, said, you need to start eating some animal protein. And I don't know how many people on this call at one point were vegan. It's very, very hard once you're vegan and you've got this kind of clean idea in one's mind, in my mind, to go back from plant-based to animal-based. So I was very, very resistant. But the honest truth is one of the biggest needle movers was when I finally added in I resisted and resisted. And when I added in some turkey, the first thing was white meat turkey. It's a slow burning log on the fire of energy. You know, we eat an orange, it's gone like, you know, or we eat kale like that, it's gone. We put it in our body, we chew it up, it disperses and it's gone. But meat, animal protein, and I'm not saying one way or the other what people should eat on this call. That's not the point. I'm just saying my own experience. For me, I was very resistant to eating meat. And so my doctor in Scottsdale, Arizona kept saying, okay, I was going to the hospital every 12 weeks at that point. He said, okay, I'll see you in 12 weeks. You'll be back in your wheelchair. I'll see you in 12 weeks. Okay, I'll see you in 12 weeks each time. And I resisted and resisted. And finally, I just got so frustrated with myself. What am I fighting? That my husband went to Whole Foods and got some clean, nice white meat turkey and brought it home, and I started eating it. And within 5 days, I was walking.
Wow.
Wow. I'm not saying that turkey is a miracle cure. That's really not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is my personal body needed that energy, right? And what I was teaching my clients all those years as an energy magician is you got to find out what works for you. You got to use your body as a barometer to figure out what works for me. Some people do really well on a plant-based diet. Some people do really well on a high protein diet. Some people are sort of in the middle, and you've got to figure that out for yourself. I just don't think that food is a one size fits all. I know that if I didn't have mostly vegetables and one time a day clean animal protein and a little bit of fruit, I'd be in that same position that I was. So I just keep it real clean. I haven't had any sugar or wheat in 9 years. No sugar, no wheat, 9 years, because it just works for me. And that doesn't mean that everyone can't have sugar or wheat. That's totally fine, but it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work. I look at that soft pretzel that I was talking about before, and it just feels like pain in my kneecaps. So it's easy for me to just stay away from it. So you got to figure out what works.
We have a few health coaches on the line on the call as well. So I know this is like they're like probably cheering in their chairs at home or at their office. I'd love to ask a couple questions about just how you get started with your clients. So when it comes to the legal work that you do, like who's the right type of clients that you work with, and what's kind of like the beginning of the process of working with you?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing is, you asked a couple really great questions there. Let me break them all down. So the right person to work with me is somebody who has an online business and either has legal documents but they aren't sure if they're protecting them, have legal documents that they borrowed from their business coach, their cousin, their friend, or they just swiped off the internet, or somebody who has no legal documents at all. 50% of my clients are women who don't want to hit launch, are entrepreneurs who don't want to hit launch on their website, don't want to put out that first blog post, don't want to let money change hands with that first client until they're protected. Mm-hmm. And half of them are people who have been in business for a while, who have a successful business and are just suddenly really tired of looking over their shoulder, wondering, is something that I'm going to do come back and bite me in my sweet little entrepreneurial buns? Mm-hmm. So the right person to work with me is anyone who provides a service. Mm-hmm. So that's your coaches. I have three specific different kinds of packages for coaches, because there's different, what we call in a little lingo here, exposures. That means places where you're vulnerable. And that's different for a health coach, mm-hmm. a life coach, and a business coach. We've got different exposures. For example, a health coach needs to be talking about nothing that I'm giving you here is intended to treat, cure, heal, or diagnose any illness, mm-hmm. for example. But a business coach doesn't need to be talking about that. She needs to be talking about nothing in this program is a guarantee of future earnings, for example. And so we've got different exposures or different places where it's my job to figure out where those holes are in your convertible top. And I don't just plug them up with duct tape, right? I want to put a hard shell convertible top over your business so that we know you're protected. So that's health coaches, life coaches, business coaches. And then I kind of lump them all together, service-based entrepreneurs. So those are our copywriters, sometimes our authors, depending on what kind of books you're writing, like ghost writers. So depending on who you're working with as an author, I see you. Depending on who you're working with, it's your web designers, it's your VAs, your social media managers, your content managers. Those are, so every single person. And is there anyone on the call, if somebody could pop into the chat box, if I didn't cover who you are and what you do, I'm happy to kind of let you know if you fall into one of those categories where I stand. If anybody wants to chat, pop anything in the chat.
We'll just kind of give a plug real quick for the chat box. You are welcome to ask as many questions as you'd like, and then Allison and I'll make sure we allow Layne to see them, and we'll read them to you. So feel free to ask there, or you can always share your screen if you want to. So Layne, when you're putting in those categories, if you have a coach and they also say they have a podcast, like they're a health coach, but they also have a pet podcast and a Facebook. Is that one that's under the same umbrella?
Yeah, it is. And we'll get to the word, hopefully we'll get to the word umbrella before we wrap. So yes, what it looks like to work together. The first thing that I always say is the first thing we have to do is we have to dispel, I just got my list. I was at a mastermind this weekend and I put up on the board, legal is ... And I gave the women an opportunity to let me know what they think legal is. So that's really the first step, right? Is dispelling these myths that people have about legal. And let me just read you the 6 highlights that I got. I got a lot of answers that were similar. I put them into 6. That is the first step, is to realize that working with me will not be any of these things. Here we go. Legal is boring, hard to understand, scary, intimidating, threatening, expensive, and one brave woman said necessary, which of course got my heart fluttering, right? So the first thing that we're going to do when we work together is very quickly identify and dispel those myths, because like you do, Marcy, I do a lot of mindset work right before we get started. We do it quick. We spend 5 minutes and we bust those myths so that everyone can be clear. And I reframe what legal is for people. Mm-hmm. I think having your legal in line and what I call your legal ducklings in a row is actually a gift that starts out your relationships with everyone you work with the power and the potential to create more trust in those relationships, to create expectations where everyone is on the same page, where your business is more organized and more thought out. Your business is set up for growth. Just by having your legal in place, you're going to automatically up level what you're doing, no matter what point you're at. So we spend a very quick little moment on mindset. And then I spend time back and forth hearing about each individual person's business. I do a free call. It's a 30-minute call. I call it a legal audit or a rainy day. My whole thing is umbrellas, right? So we also call it your rainy day readiness call to get you ready in case there's a rainy day. And what I do is I go through, if a coach or entrepreneur already has some documents, I go through and do a full audit of what she's already using. And if she doesn't have anything, we start from scratch. The next thing that happens is I listen and I ask a lot of questions about exactly what kind of a business you're running. Who are you serving? How are you set up? So that I can then do my job to identify where are those holes in your business? Where are you exposed, right? Where is that rainstorm, thunderstorm, or even worse storm gonna come in through your convertible top, through those holes? And then my hard work comes. I do the heavy lifting to patch up those holes for you. So there's a basic package, which I call the legal umbrella, all the essentials. These are the 10 contracts that every single person needs. Y'all, if you have nothing else, you have to have these 10 key legal pieces in place. Would you like me to go over them now? Do you feel like this is the time? Shall I?
Why don't you give us a quick rundown of what they are?
Yeah, you need a website privacy policy. It is the law. You need a website privacy policy. You need your website terms and conditions. This is like the monopoly rules. This is where you're gonna set up all your intellectual property or copyright protections, your disputes, what's going to happen if something goes wrong. We never want something to go wrong, but my job is to make sure you have that roadmap and you're protected in case something does go wrong. You need your website disclaimer, which goes on your website and disclaims your response, lets everyone know where you're responsible on your website and where you're not responsible. You then need what I call, and what I think may be the most important thing of all, I call it your number one priority mini disclaimer pack. And this is going to be a paragraph of language that you are going to put on every single piece of content before you put it out in the world. It is going to let everyone know what you do, and sometimes more importantly, what you don't do. So that if anything does go off track, you are not going to be held to a different standard. For example, as a health coach, I don't want you to be held to the same standard as a doctor, nurse, or naturopath. So I know you're going to give that high standard of care to your clients, but in the law, I don't want you being held to that standard. So that number one priority disclaimer, every single person must have that. It will make you feel so powerful in your business, so ready to share your content, ready to put yourself out there, ready to change hands with your clients, ready to have money change hands. We've got 1, 2, 3. Then we come to the heart of any coaching program or entrepreneur package, which is your clients, right? We've got your one-to-one client agreement. Then we've got your terms of use, which is if you've got a group program or a digital course online. And then we've got your testimonial release. People, we've got to be safe when we're taking other people's photographs, names, and what they've said about us. We want to have permission to use that wherever, forever, whenever. So we want to get a testimonial release. We've got a live event publicity release, which allows us to say all those incredible things that people say about you, use them in your marketing. And then we've got 2 small documents, a payment plan addendum and a credit card authorization. Those 2 go together, they're real small. And those 2 go together just to round out. It's those 10 contracts are I know I went fast, but those are every single thing that an online entrepreneur needs to keep herself safe. Those are all bundled into one bundle called All the Essentials. We got on this subject because you were asking about masterminds and podcasts, and I consider those your bells and whistles. So once we've got those foundational pieces in place, in that first phone call, I'm going to find out what else you do. You know, are you speaking on stages? Do you have a podcast? Are you having guests on your podcast? Are you running a mastermind? Are you hiring people? Do you have a VA? What kind of intellectual property do you have that are assets that you may not even be aware of? And I will help you protect all of those pieces. I consider those add-ons, though those are a little bit more advanced contracts. It doesn't mean they're any harder to understand. Everything is still written in plain English, I promise. But the first priority is not to get overwhelmed and just to get those key foundational pieces in place. And then we build from there. Doesn't mean we can't do it all at once, but that's the process. I have a beautiful platform. Each client has her own portal with all of her business. All of our conversations are in there. Everything that she owns, that all of her contracts, she's able to go in there and have an online home for all things legal. It's like a swanky little hangout where all good legal things happen.
And I'd love to ask, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I think one thing we love about this platform is the entrepreneurial space can be really daunting in the area of the expertise you have. Like, it's fun, and you're with all the things you know that you're doing great, all this stuff. And then there's all this other stuff, and I'll put legal in that category of other stuff. So a lot of us will get together and we'll talk about, like, well, how do you handle this and how do you handle that? And it seems to me, from our small little circle or our small viewpoint, engaging with a lawyer seems to be something that is logical but resistant. And I think some of the fear is that the old school law firms, it's like, you don't know how much they're going to charge. They charge for an assessment, but they don't advertise the assessment. So you have like the 30-minute consultation, and then next, you get a $250 bill. It's a very confusing, daunting. And then when you go to all their website, you see all the lawyers and the partners, and it just seems overwhelming. So that's kind of potentially me talking for me, but in general, it seems like that's a common theme with entrepreneurs. So the question for you is, like, specifically with you, like, when does an entrepreneur, when is it too early? Because I know the answer to too late. When is it, like, when's the right time if you're an entrepreneur and say you're trying to choose where you're making your investments?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing is, I am completely transparent about my pricing. My website is LayneLyons.com. All of my pricing is right on my website. There are no guesses. I only work with women who are ready. So I would rather a woman come to the call and know what she's getting and know what we're going to talk about. It always surprises me when we're 35 minutes into the call and a woman says to me, well, how much is this going to cost? It surprises me when people don't do their research in advance, because I've got everything totally transparent. I'm a no surprise kind of lady. So that's the first thing, is that you can go right on my website and see all of my prices. And if we want to talk about them here, I'm not sure if that was your question, but if we want to talk about that here, that's okay too. So when is it too early? It's too early when you just have an idea in your mind. When you think, I might go to nutrition school. I might get a life coaching certification. That's too early. Once you know that you're going to have a website, exchange value for money with clients, so value meaning what's in your mind that you know, as soon as you're going to open your doors and give advice to somebody other than your siblings, you are at the threshold where you need to get protected. You know, I have a lot of people say, oh, well, I don't have any paying clients. Well, let me tell you what, non-paying clients can make just as much trouble for you as paying clients, and sometimes even more. So as soon as you've got some great content that you want to share, even if you don't have a website to get started. I love a website. I think it's become today's online business cards, right? You can go on my website, you learn all about me, you learn about all the wonderful things that you can do with your legal that you might not have thought of. You may even get a couple chuckles in there. So I love a website. I think it's a great thing. I think most business owners have websites. Before you hit publish on your website, before you take money from that next client, or from your first client, or if you've already been taking money from clients and been exchanging your ideas with clients before the very next one. So you never know. You can hear from my story, right? Mm-hmm. You really can never tell when something is going to go awry. I have my clients all the time, leads before they become clients, prospective clients say to me all the time, well, I don't have that kind of clients, and my clients are in alignment with me, and I don't work with those kinds of women, and the kind of women I work with, they're never going to do anything like that. And my clients are all in integrity. Well, from where I stand, having good boundaries, having clearly communicated expectations in a written document that's fair and balanced, that you've both agreed to before you start working together, getting everyone on the same page, that's integrity. Integrity is not having surprises. You know, it's just like boundaries. Do I have a moment more? It's just like boundaries in your own life, in your personal life. You may have boundaries in your mind, like with your mom, but if you haven't communicated them, it's going to end up in unmet expectations, because you've got your boundaries all in your mind. Like, oh, she can't talk to me about I don't have kids, but she shouldn't tell me how to parent. Right? But if you haven't communicated, this is my line and this is where I draw the line, that's your own, you're opening yourself up to have all kinds of failures. Same thing with our business, maybe even more so in our business, because I'll tell you what, when we are putting ourselves in a position as a professional and a client is giving us money for our services, they are going to have high expectations. That's just natural. When you're coming in and you're paying somebody $1,000, they're going to have high expectations. And I will make you a promise. If you don't set up those expectations for her, she is going to fill in the blanks for you. And her expectations are often going to be outrageous. I have heard it all. I have heard some outrageous unmet expectations that clients, because the entrepreneur didn't set up in advance, didn't take the lead and say, these are the boundaries, these are the expectations, this is what I promise you. This is what I'm going to promise you, and this is what I expect from you, which is all in that one-on-one client agreement. I literally take you step by step by step. I know, because I'm a coach too. So I know what kind of things, exactly what it takes to set up an agreement that's going to foster that trust, that's going to create that.
To watch a live Tuesday at 2 program with Revel Coach, visit us at revelcoach.com. Until next time.